The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the monthly web workshop, where this month's topic is X4 Advanced List View Management. My name is Matt McCroan. I'm a Tier 2 Customer Support Specialist here at Fluke. Before we get started, I just want to confirm, can everybody hear me okay? Is the audio working? Feel free to type into the chat and just confirm that you can hear me. All right, looks like we are good to go. Again, this web workshop is going to be over list view management and some of the more advanced features we have for this. Some housekeeping items before we begin. The session will be recorded. Usually it is posted onto eMaint University the Friday after the webinar takes place. So this Friday will most likely be up on the eMaint University. Your phones will be muted the entirety of this web workshop. And feel free to type questions at any time. They will be answered at the end of the presentation. I do ask that at the end, when the questions are being asked, you do give me a little bit of time, because I am typing back the responses and there can be a lot of questions. It may just take me a minute or two to get to your question. So I ask for your patience, but all right, so just a topic overview of what we're going over today. Just list view overview, column management, some list view actions, and some sorting and filtering. All right, so we'll begin with list view overview. So we'll be going over options and menus, how to star a record and what that entails, how that correlates to the wall, and some of the account settings that affect the list view. So I'm going to go into my account real quick. All right, we're going to be mainly focusing on the work order list view. Just keep in mind that all of these things I'm showing you for list view, the different options and tricks, they pretty much pertain to every list view. Every table has a list view. So if I go to assets, you're going to see that there's a list view, looks pretty much the same, just with different fields more pertaining to assets. The one difference you will notice between tables is going to be on your actions menu. Actions menu for assets, for example, is going to have print, distribute PMs, mass change values. This top section, where before the line divides it, is always going to be different. And these bottom three sections will generally be the same: select all, deselect all, and data export. If I go to work orders, you will see when I go to actions, you have closeout, print work permits, and mass change values. If you were to go to PMs, for example, you would have different options there as well. Under the Actions tab, since we're right here, you'll notice that Closeout. This allows you to close out work orders from the list view. If you have a lot of work orders in your system that you need to close out and you don't want to go into each one, this allows you to mass close out. You would just select all of the options that you wanted to close out, come here and hit the closeout button, and that would allow you to close multiple work orders at a time. This also functions with the next option down, the print option. You can do batch printing from this section, and from this actions dropdown, you would just select all of the items that you want to print out, come to the print section, and you'd be able to print all of those as well. The print work permit option is if you utilize work permits in the system, it would allow you to do the same thing as the print work order button. Mass change value allows you to make changes to multiple items at once for the same value, and I'll get into that a little bit more a little later in the presentation. Select all, like I mentioned before, and it's going to select all of the items. Keep in mind that if you do click select all, you'll notice that over here it says 50, only 50 are selected, and down here I have 828 work orders. It's only going to select all of the records that are visible on your page currently. So right now I'm only displaying 50 items per page. that means only 50 items will be selected. If I change that to 100, 50 items will still only be selected, but if I re-click that, 100 items will be selected. If I deselect all, it will deselect all of the options. The next option down and the last option is going to be data export. If you need to export the information from any of these tables, you can click this and it'll give you multiple options to export these pieces of information: HTML, PDF, Excel, and CSV. Your options on the right side are going to be how the records are exported. So all records will select all 828 of my work orders and export the information on the list view. Selected records, if I had any of my records selected as they were before, it would just do those, and current page will just do however many items are on the current page. So in this instance, it will be 100 items would export if I were to utilize that. All right, so before we get into some of these other menu options, I do want to just touch on the account settings that do affect the list views. So I'm going to go to our account settings right now. I'm going to click on my name and account settings. Keep in mind that account settings are only available to the admin user. You can go to account settings in sub-users, but it will only allow you to access this main page for account settings right here. You won't be able to access any of these other tabs. So for this, we're going to user interface settings, and this is going to be where all of the settings that pertain to the list view are held. So we're going to scroll down to the table and record display, and the ones that are going to mainly affect the list view are going to be the define control plus click behavior, the prevent text and table cell from wrapping, and the expand record actions in separate toolbar. All right, so for the first example, we are going to talk about the define control click behavior. So what this does is it allows you to open a record in a new tab. So right now it's set to open in a new browser window. I'm going to change it to open in a new pop-up dialog and save that. I'm going to stay in my account settings and just open a new tab and go back to the work order list view and show you. So what I'm going to do now is just click into a work order record, but I'm going to hit the control key on my keyboard first, and that's going to open that work order in this pop-up window like this, instead of opening it in a new tab up here, which is what the setting was set before I changed it. It opens it in the same window just for a little bit easier view, so you're not having to click back and forth. When you're done with this, you can make changes to the work order and then just exit out of it, and you're still on your list view screen. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch that back to open in a new browser and show you an example of what that does. I'm going to hit Control on my keyboard again, click a work order. If you do make changes and you're utilizing multiple tabs like I'm using, this was a good example of that, you'll want to refresh your page. The settings from how they were saved previously are going to be cached in your browser. So unless you refresh your page, it will still remember those old settings. So you'll notice I hit Control and I clicked this and it opened this work order in a new tab. And all you'd have to do is just exit out. This stays open and you can just continue on with what you were working on. So the next option down is prevent text in a table cell from wrapping. Currently it is turned on. So if I go over here and you adjust your table column, your width, and typically it only works for longer descriptions such as asset description here. I'm gonna scroll this over if it wants to cooperate with me. And you'll notice that it is covering up the text. It's not forcing it down. It's not doing anything. It's just shrinking the column and you can't see all of the text. That is where the text wrapping button will come into play. If I unclick this, turn it off, save the changes, come back here, I'm going to refresh my screen so the changes take effect. Save. It'll automatically resize the columns to the column width, but when I go here to adjust the column width, you'll notice that, for example, here, whereas before it was just continuing on behind these other columns and you were losing visuals of that, you can now force it down so longer text will go on to multiple lines and you'll still be able to see it in the list view. All right, and the last option, I believe I said it was the expand record actions to separate toolbar. I was mistaken, I apologize. It is its grid setting. It is default operator when searching in string columns. You'll notice that mine is set to contains. Yours may be set to starts with. Those are generally the two that people change it to, but these are going to be directly correlated to what operator all of these filter options default to. So this little funnel icon with a circle around it next to all the columns are your operators. And you'll notice that you have is equal to, is not equal to, is greater than. This is always going to default to is equal to because it is a date field and it also has the same effect for work order number, which is a numeric field. So numeric fields and date fields or date time fields will always default to is equal to no matter what is set in here, because there just isn't a contains option for those field types. But if I come over to assets and I put in a filter for truck, you'll notice at the top here it says filter applied, asset ID contains truck. I didn't set the operator for this, so just by default it is going to always be contains unless you change it. You do have the capability of changing it by just clicking on the operator, and if I wanted to do is equal to truck, I can change the operator. There are no asset IDs that are equal to truck, but I do know there is an asset ID that's equal to truck 1. And so now instead of there potentially being thousands of trucks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, I'm just looking at the work orders associated to this particular asset. And again, you can change the default operator to any of the available character field operators. I do recommend contains. I find that's easiest, but if it works better for your system and your operating purposes to use starts with or contains any word, it's completely up to you. But that pretty much sums up and goes over all of the account settings that have anything to do with the list view itself. So I'm going to close this window and we're just going to focus on this. I'm going to clear the filter. And now that's going to segue into finishing what these menu options do up here. Once you get past actions, you have a plus sign. This is going to be on most of your table records. So assets, contacts, tasks, purchase orders, it'll all have an add button up here. And when you hover over it, you notice a drop down right here. These are all of the different forms that I have for my work orders. So I have a mobile form, a default form, and one for really important work orders. Your assets may only have default and mobile. So they will have different options there. But if I were to just click the plus sign for add new record, it's always going to go to the default form. If you want to change the form and create a record in that specific form, you would have to hover over it and actually click into the really important work orders for that specific form. The next option over is change title bar color. The title bar is just this section up here where you see the work orders and the menu options. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to green. You'll notice that that changes. That is specific to the table. So if I go to assets, you'll notice that it's still the black color. If you want to designate your different tables by color, that gives you the option to do that. All right, the next option over is Manage Table Relations. This allows you to bring other tables information into your list view for work orders for this example. So if I wanted to see information from assets in the work order table that isn't housed in the actual work order form, I could pull that over, or charges, for example. I'm going to get into the different options for joining these tables a little bit later, but that is the main purpose of this. The next option over is Manage Filter. This is going to be one of the more handy options, and we'll just go ahead and go into filtering since we're here, and this is one of the longer sections of the presentation today. So multiple ways to filter in the list view. As you saw before, you can type into these boxes right here. If I want to search for truck, I can search for truck in here. It's going to filter for everything that contains the word truck. Just briefly go over all of these again. These are the different operators you have available to filter by. If I want to see all the work orders that have an asset ID that doesn't contain truck, I can do does not start with, and these are all of my assets that aren't trucks. If I wanted to do a little bit more advanced filtering from here with operators, I could do contains any word. So I'm going to clear the filter real quick and come over to asset description. With the contains any word filter option, it does give you a little bit more pliability with how you filter. So if I want to see everything with two different words, so truck and diesel. Just give it a second. So now it's going to show me all of the work orders in my system that have an asset description of either truck or diesel or both. As in this case, you see truck, you see diesel, but this case you only see truck. So it just gives you the ability to filter for keywords in this area. The options for work order date are more limited in this section. You do have more options to do this. So if I wanted to just filter for work orders that start with today or that were created today, I don't have any. But if I were to filter for is less than today, so it's going to show me all the work orders that were created before today's date. And what I mean by you do have less options in the operators for a field like this is going to be our next section of filtering, which is going to come up to this filter option again and click Modify Selected Filters. This is going to pull up a list of all of your filters that are currently applied. You'll see asset description contains any word, truck, diesel, and work order date is less than value of 3/18/2020, which is today's date. For work order date, I want to do a date range. So instead of having to do is equal to this or is greater than this, I can do an is in range from this pop-up window for modify table filters. And from here, I would be able to do, if I wanted to search for work orders from February 1st to February 28th, so the entire month of February, I could apply the filter. Let me just clear the other filter. Just look for work orders that were created in that date range. I don't have any work orders in the system, so let's just keep going back. We'll do from January 1st until 2020, still in the work orders, and you could just keep going back. If you want to go back months, you can just keep selecting it until you find the data you're looking for. And here we go. So from October 1st, 2019 until the end of February, I have all of these work orders. And you'll notice that during that, when I cleared the filter, that I clicked here to go to the pop-up window instead of going up here and clicking Modify Selected Filters. That's another way you can access the Modify Selected Filters. If you have a filter in applied, you can come up here, select this, and it will automatically take you to this instead of having to go over here. It just saves you a click, really. You can clear the filter from here, or you can hit the clear filter button and it will do the same thing. If you have multiple filters and you don't want to click delete all on all of them, you can just hit the clear filter button and it will do that, and just hit apply changes. Once you do that, you'll notice your list view goes back to normal unfiltered. And you can still click the all work orders hyperlink that is up there next to filter applied, and it will bring this information up as well. We're going to get in a little bit later into more advanced filtering. So I'm going to come back to this tab. The next tab over is Manage Table Sorts. It's basically going to be whatever sorts are applied to your table currently. So you can add a sort to your columns by clicking the column header. So for work order number, if I want to see the oldest work order number to the newest work order number, I can do an upward arrow sort, and I can just click that and change it to a descending sort to show the most recent one. And if you click it one more time, it will remove the sort altogether. So one sort is one click on the column header is an ascending sort. 2 clicks, a second click on the column header is a descending sort, and a third click on the column header removes it altogether. One thing to keep in mind when you are adding sorts is the fact that you can have a sort on a column that may not be in your list view, and it could be skewing the way you're viewing information, and you may not understand why. Like if I have a sort on work order number, there could be a sort on a field that's not showing here and you don't realize it, and your numbers are maybe out of order. That's where this button up here comes in handy. It's going to show you all of your table sorts on all of your tables, or on all of your columns rather. So right now I only have the one column with a sort on it, but I'm going to show you a quick example. If I added a sort by close by and added that, I now have 2 sorts on the table, and I can move that above the work order one or work order number sort, and that will make it take precedence to the work order number. So it's going to sort by closed by first and then work order number. And when I hit apply changes there, let it load, you'll notice that while I have a work order number sort for an ascending sort here, closed by is not in my list view. The numbers are not showing in order that they should be. You can easily remove that and see what sorts are on by clicking that button. All you have to do is come over here. I don't want the closed by sort on here. All I have to do is let that load and remove the closed by hitting the minus sign. I can hit apply changes, and that will only apply the work order number sort. Again, you can have multiple sorts. It's going to go in the order that you add them, or the order that they appear on the right-hand side, rather. So work order number is going to be the first sort that the system looks at, then it'll go by picture, then it'll go by account number, then action. You can move those around by just dragging and dropping them as you need, and you can remove them by either dragging and dropping them back over here or hitting the minus sign, and that will remove them. You can also change the sort type by clicking the arrow right here. So up, down, up and down. You can't remove it by clicking it 3 times, similar to the other way, but you would just click the minus sign. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all the sorts, and just remember to click apply changes when you do this, because if you accidentally hit close or this X up here, it's not going to take, none of the changes you did would take effect. So I'm going to hit apply changes, no more sorts, and from there we're good to go and move on to the next section. So manage table columns. This is going to be what you see in your list view. So right now I have work order number, work order date, asset ID, asset description, work order type, open history, and job status. You're not limited to that. You can add any fields you want from the work order table here. We'll click on the Manage Table Columns button, and that will prompt another pop-up similar to the sort. You have your left side, which is all of your available fields to add to your column list view, and on your right are all of the fields that are there. On the right side, similar to the sort section, all you have to do to move these in the layout that you want them to appear is just drag and drop. So if I want job status before open history, I'll just drag and drop that. If I want work order type at the very end, I can just drag and drop it at the end and configure it in whatever way you want. If I want to come over here, I can scroll down and see all of the different fields that are available for me to add to my column list view. Or I could just type it in if I know for sure what I want to add. Let's say I want to add my comments field. I could just type in COM. It will show you all of the different fields that start with or contain that COM. And I can just hit the plus sign. If I hit the plus sign, it's always going to add it to the very end. If I drag and drop, I can just place it wherever I want from the get-go. So I want comments right after work order date. I'm going to hit apply changes. You'll notice once I hit apply changes and it processes that my list view is going to change to how I laid it out before. So work order number, work order date. Now we have comments added, asset ID, asset description, job status, open history, and work order type. You'll remember that we did change the order of these and they're now in that order. The next option over is going to be clear grid state. Clear grid state is going to clear any filters, sorts, and table joins that you have currently and reset your list view to its default. Whenever you click on it, it will always give you a prompt like this to reset grid preferences. Would you like to reset all your saved grid preferences? And from there, you'll want to either hit yes or no. Generally, it's not going to mess anything up in your system if you do this, but I don't recommend doing this unless you absolutely need to. So if you feel like you need to do this, I would contact our support team. They'll let you know if it's the best idea or not. Just because if you have your list view configured in a very specific way, you've spent the time to put all the columns where you want, add columns that you need, table joins, sorts, filters, anything like that, this is going to clear those. So before you do this and before you undo all the work that you've worked towards, I just recommend always contacting support. Again, not going to remove any data or mess anything up in your system, but I'm going to click yes just to show you what it does. And I do apologize. The system seems to be running a little bit slow for me right now. All right. So now that it's loaded, you'll notice that the column that I added for comments is gone, and work order type, open history, and job status reverted back to where they were before I made any of the changes. Next option over is starred items. Starred items is just gonna only show you a filtered list of all the items that you have starred in the system. Your starred items are displayed here. A starred item may be something, a work order that is really important to you, an asset that's really important that you want to be able to track and keep tabs on. Starring an item is specific to each account. It's not data set wide. So if I'm in my admin account and I have these starred items, my sub users won't have the same starred items. the way I mentioned you can keep track of stuff like this and different changes of your starred items is by this option up here. You hit the open sidebar option and you would click on wall. Your wall is going to be your most recent changes to any of these items. So you'll notice an hour ago I made a work order save to 113, and an hour ago for asset ID 1019 I made a change as well. If I had made more changes in the system, it would track to the start items, it would track that here as well. I'm going to uncheck that. That'll take me back to my regular list view. And from there, I am going to just choose the last option, which is maximize. Maximize takes you to a full screen mode. It doesn't give you the table options or any of the upper menu options that you have. To exit this, you can just hit it again, and it'll take you right back to the main list view options. All right, some of the other options that you have for selecting and deselecting all, you can click this box at the column header, and that will select all the items on your page. So again, it's only going to be the page that you are currently looking at and the items that are on that page. If I deselect it, it's going to deselect all. The same thing goes for the starred items. I can star everything on this page, or deselecting it will unstar everything on this page. Generally, I recommend being careful with that because, as you could tell, I had multiple work orders starred that I may have wanted, but I don't know just off the top of my head which ones they were. If I accidentally clicked that and unstarred all of my items, you would just have to go back through and manually reselect all the ones that you had. So just be a little careful and wary of clicking that. And then some other options you have are this little arrow over here to the left. You can go directly into the record by clicking View. If you want to close out the record from the list view and don't want to use the Actions dropdown, you can do that here. Print, you can directly make a purchase to a work order from here. You can email the work order. Pretty much anything from the Actions menu when you go into the work order itself. Go to the Actions. Any of these options are going to be what that arrow on the left-hand side gives you the ability to do. This also does give you the ability to delete the work orders. Not everybody has access to delete work orders or any items, for example. That would be a user role that you would, the administrator of your account would have to either assign, or if you are the admin, you have the user right to do so. All right, I mentioned earlier that we were going to go over table joins a little more in depth, and now we will talk about that. So for this example, I am going to add the assets list view, or the asset table and the charges table. When I add the tables, you'll notice that it says left. If you click this, you can change it to right or inner. Left table join is going to be all the records same as you would look at it without the table join, just adding in the information you want from those tables that you added. A right table join will only allow you to see any work orders that have asset and or charges records associated to them. So if I had a work order in my list view that didn't have an asset associated to it, didn't have a charge to it, a right table join will automatically filter that out. So when you're adding table joins, just keep in mind that if you don't see something in your system, maybe it's you put a right table join in or inner table join. Inner works similarly to right. Generally, you're always going to want a left table join. I would say 9 times out of 10, that's the type of table join that you're going to want. It defaults to left, so I recommend always just leaving it as left unless you have a really specific need for a right join. So once I have all the tables over that I want, I just hit apply changes. You're not going to notice any change. It's going to refresh the screen, but there aren't any fields that I've added in specifically yet. So it's going to be exactly the same. I'm going to go up to modify, or I'm sorry, I'm going to go to manage table columns, and we're going to go over how to add columns into the tables from those, into the fields from the tables. So where you see the type to search, where I searched for comments earlier, to the right of that you have work orders. Before you only had the option of work orders, now you have the option to change it from work orders to charges or assets. So for assets, these are all the available fields on the asset table that I can pull into the work order list view. So the comments on an asset table are most likely going to be different than the comments on your work order table, because comments on work are specific to that work done on the asset, and comments on the asset are just notes for what the asset is. But for this example, let's use available for service, because the work order is not going to show me if this particular asset is available for service. So I'm going to put that right next to asset ID. And then I'm going to add a charges field in for X cost. X cost is going to be the total of all the charges that you add to a work order. You'll notice that when I clicked it over there, an aggregate was put on it. That aggregate is sum. You can change that to average, min, max, count, or sum. For this particular one, you're going to want to leave it as sum. One thing to note is you can't remove the aggregate, because one work order may have multiple charges. It's a one-to-many relationship. It's always going to put an aggregate on there, because the system isn't going to just identify the first record, or you can't just identify one record from that particular work order. So what it's doing is taking the sum of all the charges, parts, labor, miscellaneous, any type of charge from that, and putting it into this column. Going to process, let that load, and you'll see over here we have available for service. If it is available for service, you'll see that it says yes. If it's not, it'll be blank, or if you do have the option for no, you can select that. And then over here for X cost, you'll notice for work order 102, for example, $537.50. If I click into that work order and go to work order charges, you'll see there is a total of the charges for $537.50. Now, to notice or to see what table joins you have, you just click on the Manage Table Joins again. You can remove it. If you do remove a table join, it will remove the field that you added. So I just removed charges from my table joins. Once I did that, you're going to let your screen refresh. You'll notice that the X cost column disappeared and is no longer there. All right, so some more options down here on the Manage Filter section will be Save Filter, Toggle Starred Filter, Delete Filter, Save as Report, and Save as Permanent Filter. So we'll go over those now. Say you have a filter that you use all the time and you want to be able to access it easier than just typing in a filter every time. So say you want to do asset ID contains truck, but you only want to see PM work orders that are open. So I just went through 3 steps of filtering there. Really not that long of a process, but to save some time, you can come over here to the Manage Filters option and save that filter. This is just me naming the filter. The additional options are mine and global. Mine, this filter would just be available to me. So I would be the only one able to use this. If I click global, which I'm going to save it as, anybody in my data set, so any of my sub-users would be able to utilize this saved filter as well. So I'm going to save the filter. And you'll notice that over here in this little drop-down box that the filter name populated there, and you'll see that it's global. This allows you to see from this drop-down all of the filters that have been saved in the past. So the ones that are specific to me in my account are all of these. And you'll notice that some of them do say global. That's just going to be the ones that I created that were global, specifically from this account. And then down here are all the ones that have been created by various different people in my company, maybe that set them to global as well. If you want to clear that filter, all you have to do is hit clear filter. And that will bring the option back. You will notice that when you do apply a saved filter, so let's just add the filter back real quick. You lose the option to filter from these column headers. Whenever you apply a save filter, you don't have the option to add more filters from this specific section. If you wanted to add more filters on top of that, you can either click this button for modify table filters, and then click add rule, filter for whatever else you would need, and then hit apply filter. Or the other option is, you'll notice that when I cleared the filter the last time, that clears the saved filter, but would keep the filter initially. And then you would be able to filter from there. The next option down is toggle starred filters. If I had any of my filters that were starred, I would be able to specifically toggle between those. Delete filter gives me the ability to, if I accidentally made this filter or if the filter is no longer applicable, I could just delete the filter once it's applied, and it will no longer be a saved filter in my system or anybody else's. You'll notice that it disappears from the list, and it's not in the global filters option. Save as report. If you were to apply a saved filter, come up here, you could save as report. This allows you to quickly just create a report based off of the information that you're seeing here. And the last option down here is save as permanent filter. So I'm going to click that. Saving as a permanent filter allows you to permanently have this particular set of criteria for filtering applied to a specific account. I'm in my admin account right now, and I don't have any sub-users associated to this. You cannot apply a permanent filter to an admin account. You can only apply permanent filters to a sub-user account. So if I had an available user, all I would have to do is select the user from here. It would apply the current filter, which is open history contains O, and then hit apply changes. And then until the admin decides, that particular person would not be able to see any work orders that were closed and any work orders that were not PMs. So they would only be able to see this specific set of criteria in their account. And you can see where permanent filters are applied and what permanent filters are applied from going to main menu, administration, and user administration. You would click on the person that you think the permanent filter is applied, and in this permanent filter section, you would be able to see if they have any applied and what was applied if they were. I'm going to go back to the list view real quick. And, okay, sorry. And from there, I am going to show you how to remove a permanent filter from an account. So to remove a permanent filter, it's not as easy as just clicking clear or anything like that. It's a simple process, but you have to click Save as Permanent Filter. Click on the blank option. Once you click on the blank option, you would choose the user that you want to remove the permanent filters from. You would select the user, it would move over to selected users, and then you would apply changes. So basically, to remove a permanent filter, you have to apply a blank permanent filter to that user. All right, I'm going to clear this. There may be some times that you come into contact with a list view that you may not be able to access. I have one set up, so I'm going to go to Work Requests List View. And you'll notice that I get function name is missing. This may not be the error message that you get, but there are a lot of messages similar to this. It may be function argument count invalid or operator operand mismatch. It will always display in the top like this. To clear this error, you don't always have to contact support. Typically, it just indicates that there is a bad filter applied to the list view. And how you see that is you would just come up here, you would go to Modify Selected Filter to see the filter that is applied, and you will notice that I do have requested date is equal to expression, and the expression is not valid. To clear that, you would either click this delete button or clear filter, but once you do that, you just hit apply changes, and your list view will now appear as normal. 90% of the time, I would say there is a filter on a date field that is bad that would cause one of those errors, but there are some instances in other fields that it doesn't happen. Just like I said, all you have to do is come up here, modify selected filter, clear the current filter applied, apply filter, and that will clear the issue almost 100% of the time. Now, just real quick before we finish up and get into questions, I do want to show you a little bit more of an advanced filter option that you do have. I'm going to go to the Modify Table Filters. I'm going to look up work order date. And I'm going to do is less than an expression. So for this expression, I'm going to do date, open parentheses, close parentheses. That is a date function that will return today's date. So if you ever see this in your system, it may be in reporting or anything like that, that is going to give you the current date that you are working with. There are a list of functions for filtering and for filtering reports. If you go to the shortcuts menu and then go to Help Center, you can just search for functions and it'll give you a list of all of the most basic functions that you could utilize. But now my list view is only filtering for work order dates that are less than today's date. If I wanted to do tomorrow's date, I could do +1. So that's looking at today's date plus 1 day. And I can do that. And if you were to apply this filter, this would be any date that is, so if you have work orders in the future, for example, this would be any date that is less than tomorrow's date. So today's date would be included in that. If you wanted to do yesterday's date, you would just do -1. And that gives you the ability to just filter down a little more specifically, and whereas you wouldn't be able to with some other filtering options before. All right, well, that is going to conclude the presentation part of this webinar today. Like I said, feel free to type in any of your questions into the question section at any time. I will be answering those now. Please bear with me for just a minute if you do ask a question, because it may take me just a minute to read the question and type out the answer, as there may be multiple questions. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.